Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the members of the panel for joining us today. And I want to begin by talking about the different aspects of energy production. One of those is energy production in the Outer Continental Shelf. Virginia is a state that wants to pursue that, has a bipartisan effort. Both our senators, our delegation, our folks back at the state level all want to see that happen. We know that Virginia can be the center of energy production on the East Coast. We know that it creates jobs. We know of the economic impact that it has, the beneficial economic impact that it has. And we know that promoting offshore oil and gas development is part of all of the above energy approach. It's one tool in the toolbox there to make sure that we're doing what's necessary to make sure that we have energy independence in the long term and that we're creating the kind of strength in our energy production in the United States that are necessary. With that in mind, as part of the solution to higher gasoline prices, would you support increased energy production on the Outer Continental Shelf, including Virginia? And what is your estimation that increased supply from that production would have? And let me ask that in two realms. First is, if the permitting process were to proceed and allow Lease 220 to go forward, would there be an immediate impact of that with the anticipation of increased supply? And then what would be the long-term effects of that? Mrs. Fergutt-Roth, I'll start with you.
I think it's clear that Virginia should be allowed to proceed with its plans for exploration. We don't know precisely how much oil there is and natural gas there is. That's one reason we need to do these seismic exercises in this exploration. In Eagle Ford, in South Texas, what we have found that we have now in terms of natural gas and production is many, many more times what we thought it would be in 2008. And the same is possibly true for Virginia. And it'll have effects on the price depending on how much it's found, but also it sends an important signal that we are serious about the American oil revolution by allowing that to proceed.
Mr. Pugliese?
I'd like to clarify this question that came up earlier about it. Of course, we should embrace offshore production, particularly off Virginia. I think it looks very promising. And as we produce more oil, it's true, some OPEC players may decide to cut back, but eventually they'll accept that the endowment is much bigger out of the U.S., and we will end up on a lower price path. The key to getting to a lower price path, which we should get on, is to start to expand this huge and very cost-effective resource we have in North America, including off the coast of Virginia.
You know, and I'd add, we've had successive governors in both parties in Virginia that expressed interest in developing their offshore. We've had multiple state legislatures in the state of Virginia that expressed interest in developing the offshore, and we have a bipartisan support for it. And yet it has been taken offline. Absolutely, Virginia should be allowed to understand what's available, possibly of taking advantage if federal law would change to share in revenues from the development of that offshore resource. Virginia has already expressed interest in putting some of that to education, transportation infrastructure, things like that. And again, I think if we, as a nation, continue to show that we're serious about our own energy policy, it sends strong signals and will impact the price.
If I could add, there's nobody who's in more support of a supply and demand analysis for energy policy. Good policy requires, though, good facts and good information. And right now, policy is being driven assuming that everything relates to supply and demand, and therefore certain things make sense from efficiency point of view, from a cost point of view. But if you just assume for a minute that 25% of the price today was speculation and you're at $3 a gallon, we wouldn't be here this morning. You're here because of the price. If the price has a built-in component due to speculation rather than supply and demand, and we're certainly not saying it's all that, but there's a serious component of it which is causing bad policy and bad politics, frankly. You want to make your decision based on facts of supply and demand. We want you to make your policy decisions based on facts of supply and demand. And in order to do that, you've got to get rid of the not all speculation, but the excess speculation has to be driven out of the market so that you all in the private sector can make informed decisions on supply and demand based on actual prices related to that rather than speculation.